We are told that bacteria, parasites, and virus are responsible for disease. What if I told you that they aren't, and the only thing responsible for disease is man-made toxins? Bacteria, virus, and parasites are responsible for removing degenerative tissue and toxins from the body. They are not responsible for actual disease. Disease is man-made, not created by God or nature.
Let's say I go out and kill a goat, and he rots in the field. We have worms that will show up, we have vultures that will show up, and we have crows that will show up. The crows and the vultures are not indigenous to the tissue of that animal, but they will come and eat it. But do you blame the crows and the vultures for the dead carcass? No. That's why you can't blame the E. coli and the salmonella and the trichinosis for the dead carcass. They just feed on it. It is their job to generate tissue that is in degeneration.
But that's not my question. My question is, after you feed at 300 degrees for X minutes, where does any life appear from in it?
It could appear from extraneously.
Just extraneously.
Yeah, it could be introduced.
Like
yes.
fruit flies that just come out of nothing. Kind of.
Well, fruit flies are, from what I understand of fruit flies, they spontaneously are part of fruit for some reason, because you can hermetically seal that and have the fruit contained in an isolation chamber and never ever exposed to any insects, and all of a sudden the fruit flies will appear.
Yeah, I know.
You know, so that to me is like the worms and the parasites. They are natural and indigenous to fruit tissue, like the parasites and bacteria are indigenous to animal tissue. But the crows and the vultures aren't, but they'll come and feed on it, animal tissue. Yes?
There are myths going around that raw meat will make you sick because of bacteria, and this is why people cook their food, to destroy the bacteria which is allegedly harmful. This is false, and I will debunk this myth in this video. In fact, bacteria in cooked food is more harmful because it is mutated, and cooked food is what causes food poisoning, not raw food. From page 96 in We Want to Live by Augenis van der Planets, quote, "The bacterial count in cooked meat and eggs will grow 60 times higher than in raw meat and eggs, before it produces a putrid odor. The waste produced by bacteria feeding on cooked food is extremely toxic. That's why bacterial food poisoning in this country is from cooked, packaged, or restaurant food. I could not find one laboratory test that proved bacteria living on raw meat caused food poisoning in animals who ate it."
Anything that's cooked is going to get disease. Take those cats that were grown on the cooked foods in the Pottinger experiments. 10 years, 900 cats. All those that ate cooked foods had disease. The bacteria will get disease too if it's feeding on it. Its byproducts will be a lot more toxic. So people can get food poisoning, but it's always from pasteurized food. Take a look in the recipe book. The back chapter, it talks about all of the incidents of known so-called bacterial food poisoning came from pasteurized dairy, not raw. One incident involved 197,000 people.
So you're saying I got sick, and I got violently sick, and I really wanted to die. It was that sick for 2 days or so. And that was because it was a cooked egg?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that the likelihood, if you've got an old cooked egg that's been sitting around and the bacteria is fed on it, and its byproducts, its verotoxins are 10 to 100 times worse. Normally they're easily discarded and they're even beneficial. But when it's fed on cooked foods, it becomes a contaminant, a poison. Now, most people just are building up with these toxic substances from cooking. And it builds up, and they go into diarrhea and vomit. That's why on this diet, it reduces to 12% instead of 18 to 20%. This diet doesn't create more toxicity, but it helps you get rid of toxicity.
Augenis van der Planets even did an experiment feeding animals parasite-infested raw meat, and none of the animals tested positive for parasites. The idea that you can get parasites from eating raw meat is another myth. The larvae from parasites live inside of our tissues and are used when we become overabundant with degenerative tissue, and they come out to get rid of it for us.
Meat to see if it transferred into humans.
None, anywhere. So I put a laboratory test together. I started, started acting on General Hospital, and Santa Barbara started making a lot of money again. And also painting, I would make, anywhere from 100 to 125 an hour, doing murals and paintings in very wealthy people's homes. So I had enough money to do these laboratory tests. So I spent a lot of years spending a lot of money on laboratory tests. So one of them was I took these animals who were very weak and very old that had tested for no parasites. Fed them the parasite-infested calf's brain, chicken tripe with pinworms going crazy in them, like I ate with the salmon, and what was the other one? Oh, liver worms and heartworms. So all of these animals ate it raw, including me. Blood test for 10 weeks, urine, now the feces checked, not one parasite. This is all supposition. This is fiction. It is myth that bacteria in raw meat causes disease. Absolute myth. And I have to think back and think, how did man live? Because he didn't cook his food. If you live outdoors, making a fire is a huge, tremendous chore. And the Native American Indians and all those tribes said that they eat most of their meat raw. Only on certain celebrations did they cook it. And they always cooked it when a white man was around, because the white man prevented them from eating raw meat and having their ceremonies on the reservations. And they also got to the point where they didn't want the white man to know their secrets of health. So they wouldn't tell them about the raw meat. They wouldn't eat raw meat in front of them. Of course, the Eskimos were so remote, and they weren't slaughtered like the Southern American Indians, the southern northern continent Indians, like in America and Mexico. So they still ate raw meat all the time in front of the white man. So here we have this whole myth that is causing people probably to be very deficient in lots of proteins, amino acids, and B vitamins, even calcium. Vitamin C, you can assimilate more vitamin C in a pound of meat than you can in 5 oranges. In fact, the only food that has been proved to reverse scurvy in 1.5 days is raw meat. And those are in the annals of Dartmouth University under Vladimir Stephenson's research when he was living with the Eskimo. And there was a sea captain who got scurvy, and the only thing that was available was raw meat. Scurvy was gone in 1.5 days. So all this stuff is documented, but certainly doesn't get out there to the public.
There are a lot of myths going around about viruses and colds. You want a cold. A cold is a detoxification. The cold is primarily bacteria, the flu is viral. When you become so toxic that the bacteria cannot remove the toxins from your body without being killed by the cell, then viruses are manufactured by your cells to clean the cell so there is no damage to the DNA. Viruses are not transmutable, alive, or airborne. Viruses do not have a nucleus, respiratory system, digestive system, so how can they be alive?
Virus. Again, viruses are not alive, they're just solvents that dissolve matter. And if you're using a solvent, like if you're cleaning your driveway of grease, you have a water base with a solvent. And what happens, you wipe it up and then it gets into the bucket, and you have this bucket of all this water, maybe 2.5 to 3 gallons of water, and it's all contaminated. So it's a lot to cleanse and flush out of the system. If your body's using bacteria or parasites, they consume the degenerative tissue and they put out a fraction of it as an excrement. So let's say, like a parasite can eat 100 times its weight in 24 hours and have 1% feces. That's like us eating 100 pounds and having a 1 pound, feces the next day. That's I don't have to handle 100 pounds, I only have to handle a pound. That's the way the body works. And if it's a bacteria, they can do about 50 times their weight in 24 hours and have about a 5% secretion, sometimes up to 8. So they even reduce it. We will eat 14 pounds and have a pound, excrement the next day, a whole pound excrement. So it's much better to have bacteria and parasites rather than virus. So this is the first bacterial cold that I've had in 3 years. I pray for them, because it's so much cleaner. There are less symptoms. It can even be asymptomatic except for the mucus flow. Of course, it's partially in my brain, so if I cough, the brain hurts when I rattle it. So
if you get a cold, it means your body is...
detoxified.
So there's no such a thing as too many colds? Because I went through 3 of that in the last few months.
No, that's wonderful. That means your body's dumping wonderfully. There's a team of doctors that I lectured to about 22 years ago at Yale who were involved in a study that found that 80% of cancer reverses immediately following a cold or a flu. 80% of the cases of cancer reversing immediately followed a cold or a flu.
The bird flu is a hoax. We cannot transmit a virus from another animal. The only way you can get a bird virus is by injection. Human viruses are manufactured by your cells to remove toxins too heavy for bacteria or parasites to handle. It's that simple, and there's nothing to fear about viruses. Just keep your body free from toxins by avoiding processed and cooked foods, living in a clean, pollution-free environment, and the body will not need to manufacture viruses to clean the body. This world wasn't created for us to be constantly fearful of these microscopic things in the world. It's illogical and irrational. Don't fall for the fear-mongering or myths about disease. They are meant to make you fearful and control you. Think for yourself and learn these things for yourself. Use your God-given logical mind to discern the truth.